Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films.
When I began publishing Blockbusters and Birdwalks, it was a hosting site for essays and thoughts that I had, and that branched off into making podcasts. Then we agreed to do a partnership, and separately I have another partnership with a friend, Richard Ryan, making the High Low Bro Show. One thing that Richard said to me in our last recording concerning the Big Dollhouse is the following.
I think that 1971 is in many ways a crux point when American counterculture, and specifically the anti-Vietnam War movement, has begun to get a little sour.
As always happens, the counterculture has sort of become the culture, and there's a lot on society's plate.
Under the provisions of Title II of the 1950 Internal Security Act, also known as the McCarran Act, the President of the United States of America is still authorized, without further approval by Congress, to determine an event of insurrection within the United States and to declare the existence of an internal security emergency. The President is then authorized to apprehend and detain each person as to whom there is reasonable ground to believe probably will engage in certain future acts of sabotage. Persons apprehended shall be given a hearing, without right of bail, without the necessity of evidence, and shall then be confined to places of detention.
The year is 1971, and this very small movie called Punishment Park is debuted at the Cannes Film Festival in May. Then, after several months trying to work out a distribution deal, it opens in exactly one theater, and in the course of that season, from its debut to its very aborted release, we saw such entertainment as The Omega Man, The Last Movie, The French Connection, eventual Academy Award winner, The Last Picture Show, The Big Boss, Duck You Sucker, Fiddler on the Roof, and Duel. All of those movies happen at the same time. And the thing is, I've heard of all of those movies.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with all of those movies. And this thing called Punishment Park, I had no background in. The filmmaker, Peter Watkins, who developed his street cred as a documentarian and in fact is an Academy Award-winning documentarian for having forecast what nuclear holocaust would have been like in his native British Isles back in the, I think, 1960s. So he's not a nobody. But from the standpoint of commercial American films, he is a nobody. That's context to say the following. Punishment Park's a major work. And I'm so happy that you selected this, and I followed you blind into that alley where it was going to be shown in this obscure way. We found a copy and shared it and blah. It's just terrific. What has been your background in this movie, if any?
When we settle on whatever the subject is for the series we're doing, I try to do as thorough research as I can, and I enjoy finding stuff that I don't know about. And this one in particular, I found on several letterboxd lists, actually, of films from 1971. I do have some issues with letterboxd electorate from time to time, but it also is a pretty good resource for discovering new stuff. And like I said, this one was a sort of atop several of the lists of 1971.
One of the things that I like to consider, and it contextualizes the whole of my relationship with movies, is realizing that pick your country, we happen to be Americans, and in any given year, the number of commercial movies that are shared with the world from your country of origin is going to number in the hundreds unless you happen to be in Nigeria, Hong Kong, or India, which it can be in the thousands.
Right.
But globally, that means there are potentially tens of thousands of new feature films every single year. So the fact that you're not going to be aware of all of them, that's obvious.
Yeah.
You go back in time, it becomes ever more obvious that things in previous generations are even less noteworthy to subsequent groups of people.
Yeah, they get lost. It's like the onion of time.
But if we looked at one of those stripped away pieces and we looked just right, we would see a pre-caramelized onion slice.
That's correct.
Right in the middle of it, called Punishment Park. So this gives me great hope for the ambitions of digging into the trove of history and occasionally finding absolutely worthwhile work. Should there be anybody taking our word as a kind of gospel of taste for what you should aim for,
Yes.
watch Punishment Park. It is remarkable. One thing that drew me when you suggested it, I looked up this movie probably on IMDb, and there was a bit of poster art featuring a police officer, I think, holding a flamethrower or a gun over some object on a desert floor.
Yeah.
That struck me as being similar to the imagery used to make, market, and in fact, enact the movie THX 1138. Oh, this must be a ripoff of that movie. It must be some weird dystopian take on something that was parallel to what George Lucas was thinking about. Well, in fact, it's not a dystopian version of the future. It's a dystopian take on an alternative present. What it presents is a world that was legally possible when the movie was made. And that world is based on having federal law that allows the government to step in and exclude ne'er-do-wells from the general population and incarcerate them. This was built around how the Japanese were treated during World War II, which wasn't rescinded as law of the land until after this movie was made.
Yeah, the McCarran Internal Security Act of 1950.
The movie takes that act as background, with Nixon as the president, with the inflammation of boomer children coming of age during Vietnam, featuring then women's rights for suffrage and the rest, civil rights agitation for suffrage and the rest, around the edges queer rights for suffrage and the rest, all of it bubbling up with the concerns about the old holding down the young, student activists, etc. But people can be incarcerated by the state legally. If this is the case, they have an option. Appear before a tribunal, confess to your crimes, and immediately go to prison for an indeterminate length of time, but could run the rest of your natural life, or only be a few months or years, or you risk Punishment Park. What is Punishment Park? It's the pre-Hunger Games.
Yeah.
You're going to march with everybody else in your little troop of ne'er-do-wells, something like 53 miles against the open desert of the Mojave, without resources, without water, while being preyed upon by law enforcement.
Right.
If they capture you, you go to prison if they don't beat you to death.
Right.
If you make it through the course and find this one American flag on a pole, you'll be given your freedom. But it's a lie.
Of course.
It's just a training exercise for law enforcement to bring people down. And if you make it as far as that flagpole, as we discover through watching one group proceed through Punishment Park, you're just going to be set upon by riot police.
They're already there waiting for you.
So it's a closed system. What makes the movie rich, though, aside from the Hunger Games reference, which people in 1971 were not concerned with, is the richness of listening to these young people, and they're all young people, being put on the witness stand to confess and discuss why it is they have been incarcerated by the state, why they are considered ne'er-do-wells. That's my word of the day. And listening to their remarks as they are being prepared for this choice, prison or Punishment Park, is rich because it runs in parallel to the group that ran just before them who've already committed to doing Punishment Park. So parallel action.
Right.
One group in the open desert trying to find the flagpole, one group being judged, and we go back and forth between the two.
It was too real. It's like, this is like, I almost wanted to stop watching it. The arguments, the attitudes, the polarization, it's all very analogous to today. I was instantly having stress. I'm instantly having a negative reaction to this. I'm instantly getting angry.
But it's done on purpose, so you know that it's great.
Absolutely.
Let me just give a specific example. There is one of the incarcerated people. He's this young black man, nice afro. He's got camouflage on, and it's a dummy. It's a kangaroo court. They don't really intend to listen to him, but it's this group of white folks, all roughly middle age, except for one who's roughly his age, somewhere in his 20s, and they ask him these barbed questions that he can't possibly answer well. And yet, he goes into this statement about what is wrong with the American project.
You talk as if this is some great civilized nonviolent place. And it ain't. America is as psychotic as it is powerful, and violence is the only goddamn thing that will command your attention.
Again, there's this woman convict.
People become violent when they are deprived of their basic human needs. I think that they become violent when that is their only alternative to achieving the satisfaction of those needs. A major component of our democratic society comes from the preamble to the Constitution, which states that an individual is guaranteed the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? The rights to life. And it seems paradoxical to me that a nation with such ideals and such economic power still cannot fulfill, or seems unwilling to fulfill, basic human needs of food, clothing, and shelter.
And another young person is there, and she's being asked, what were you doing that caused you to be in trouble? And she says, I'm a musician.
Right.
I'm making music. And they're like, that's foolish.
Yeah.
But she goes off on them in certain ways. And it's awfully hard to be my age with my life experience and not feel that while I'm the age of the people in the tribunal as judges, I understand what these younger folks are going through, what they're complaining about.
Well, it seems to me that their arguments are more intellectually well-reasoned. Too many people, if this makes sense, they're not interested in being correct. They're just interested in being right. If you actually have to engage in good faith in a well-reasoned, critically thought argument, you stand a chance of not being right. You can't even allow yourself to get into the situation where you are actually intellectually engaging with a point of view that is different than yours. This kangaroo court, they're asking these questions, but, clearly most of the times they are basically outsmarted by their defendants, who are positing far better arguments for their position than the people who are going to send them to punishment park are. And then they just get tired of listening to it, and then they say something ridiculous, which starts an argument, and then they want them to, curb their profanity, as if that makes a difference.
There's even a public defendant who's there as sort of the
joke,
the puppet figure of like, this is a fair proceeding.
It's just like Oppenheimer. It's just like the end of Oppenheimer.
And every time the public defendant raises his hand or voice to express support for these young people who are vying for their lives, the tribunal shuts him down. That's out of order. That's unhelpful.
Yeah.
That's not. It is awful.
Too frequently, the people who would claim to be the most patriotic are the ones that have ideologies and views that are antithetical to what is established in our founding documents. And that is very much the case here. We are supposed to be a country of laws.
The context of the movie's release is really powerful to me because it follows Kent State Massacre, it follows the Tet Offensive, it follows Stonewall, it follows the deaths by assassination of MLK and of X and of Bobby Kennedy and Medgar Evers. I mean, these things are all stacking up. And the young people coming of age in 71, who are by definition boomers, and that's who we see on screen as our point of view testimonials, we're drawn to think of them as being like us. That's the way the movie's built.
Right.
And it does an interesting thing to complicate that, because all of the different national forces and police forces marshaled against them to run them down in Punishment Park are of similar age. It is right on screen. Here are the progressive lefties. They're being prosecuted.
Right.
And here are the conservative righties, and they're going to persecute them. And we are allowed to see these are age-similar people on opposite sides of the spectrum, and we can watch both parties clash, but also know that this is a dead-end game.
The moment the very notion of this Punishment Park exercise is expressed in the film, I'm like, well, that's a joke. They can't win. There's no way.
They're really going to be released if they make it to
no.
the... I mean,
like it's not possible. It's just there's no way.
And for a while, I sort of like, oh well, maybe those three will make it. They seem a little more athletic because there's the guy who seems asthmatic and overcome by heat. They're going to have to leave him, to try to save themselves. And you see this sort of group thing, this ethos of let's mutually help one another, but that will tax our calories. It's too hot. We should travel by night, but we can't see, etc. And you're thinking, oh, it's going to work out. Katniss is going to see it through.
Right.
But then, just riot police at the end. And a dude makes a run for it through the police, and they savagely attack everybody. Billy clubs out. Along the way, some National Guardsmen open fire, killing some of the quote participants unquote of Punishment Park. And even then, the camera lingers on those guardsmen who are trying to defend their actions, which are sort of indefensible, while they understand they have just committed a form of state-sanctioned murder.
Right.
The other important detail of this movie is it's organized around a West German-led documentary crew that is both monitoring the tribunal proceedings under canvas tent. That's the group that's being tried.
Right.
And they're also in the field following the previous group as they try to get through Punishment Park. They even become participants in some of the journey. At one point, the sound man becomes a hostage. Yeah, it's like on the nose. So when we think about all of the movies of our lifetimes, which follow this, we weren't born yet when Punishment Park comes due. I couldn't help but think of things that are self-conscious in the way this is self-conscious, but towards a different end, like something like Natural Born Killers.
Right.
Which allows the same notion. A camera crew follows around these ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah.
Again, that word.
Man bites dog.
Right.
Yeah.
And these movies are sort of built on this framework. If I were able to stick my shovel into film history and yank it and look for those jewels, perhaps I would find something pre-Punishment Park that defines this history of faux documentary. But as I put down this movie, and oh my God, I've sort of been shifted. This is clearly one of the best things I've seen in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
I thought, well, we haven't moved much in more than 50 years.
That's sort of one of the things about this film. It's more relevant today than it was before.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, but is it? Because if you weren't around then to know that, it's easy to say that because you're feeling the heat of now and not then. Should this actually make me feel a little better because times really haven't changed and we still haven't been annihilated? So could this not actually be like, on some level, this movie be like a comforting thing?
This movie affirms the idea that these conflicts between different ideological perspectives have been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And you're right, that can be a massage of goodness, of confidence, that your position is okay. But the trouble is,
it's not.
This movie pitches one group as having a distinct advantage over another,
right.
Prosecutorial power unto death.
Right.
Because some of the people entering Punishment Park, they're killed.
Right.
Additionally, I realize I'm just sort of spinning, but there is a point where several of the different testimonies given by these young people being judged by the tribunal, they say things like, I don't think you're wrong to believe what you believe, but I don't want you to express your belief on me through my life.
Right.
I want to be left alone. And they can't be left alone.
Of course not.
Because they would be an example that might suggest an alternative path to other impressionable youths. It's always, let's save the youth. I found that particularly heartbreaking. The people with the rifles and the pistols and the police force and the National Guard are creating attention by saying, we believe in a right society, this is a right society, why aren't you like our right society?
Right. I couldn't help but think a bunch about, I don't remember the university, but the one where they did that study where they took a bunch of volunteers into the basement or whatever.
I think it's Stanford University.
Stanford, yeah, and they made half of them prisoners and they made half of them guards, and this is exactly what happened. If you look at it like that, just how sort of primitive and almost simian, it's like 2001, A Space Odyssey with the dawn of man when they're around, the watering hole, and one of them figures out how to,
I'm going to jawbone this fool to death.
To beat him to death, right? All of the ideological reasons that people tell themselves or believe in or whatever to justify their position, that is just another human brain trick.
Get the defendants out of here.
These convicts. I guess that's the right way to say
Yeah.
it. They are sort of demonstrably like flower people,
These
right?
Parkers.
They're wearing the denim and they got the button-ups and
Right.
the long hair.
They're clearly hippies, yeah.
They visually look like a lot of my family members when I look through a photo album
Right.
of the late 60s and 70s. I'm a white dude. A lot of these characters are white. That's my uncle. That looks an awful lot like my auntie when she met my uncle. The other part, and this has always been true of any sort of state-sanctioned grouping, all of the officers of the law, whether police or National Guard, they're uniformed. And almost without exception, they're anonymous because of it. You can't tell them apart until they directly address the camera in close-up and pull off their sunglasses or take off their helmets or hats or whatever they're wearing, and then become differentiated as individuals.
Only the one guy had a name tag, the one Edwards. He was the only one and he's sort of the main...
He's the kind of gun instructor, right?
Yeah.
Who gives them, like,
Correct.
this is a training exercise. This is what we're going to do.
Right.
We're going to bring down these people. And the thought of that, the uniformity of the uniform, is to make somebody able to do things inside of the group and assuage their personal guilt and responsibility because the group is responsible. They are not.
Right.
The law tells me what to do. I'll be guided by the law. The law is defined by political representatives, which defines the state. I am upholding the state's needs, even if that means I'm going to shotgun somebody to
It's
death.
kind of like the mob.
If the laws have been passed, that means they're legal. That's the definition of law. To break the law means that you are a criminal. That's what these people are guilty of having done. Protesting at the wrong time, playing music in the wrong place, being too loud in a public park, whatever it might be. And that's the really interesting historical truth of the laws that were used against the Japanese in in the 1940s.
Yeah.
They were the wrong people in the wrong place, but the law said we can do something about it.
Right.
That same law was reapplied in this fantastic but not far off the mark dystopian idea of the present is really remarkable. And of course, when the movie was done, I looked up these rules, I looked up these laws, and they've fortunately been rescinded in steps so that by the time I think we reached 1972, the ability to do this was gone. The ability to make a punishment park-like system was gone. But here's something that's spooky, and we've seen this. That doesn't apply to people who are migrating here.
Right.
So in our lifetimes, we've seen something that resembles the mock kangaroo court tribunal system, the punishing apparatus of moving from place to place, the willy-nilly assault and violence that's used to cage people. We've seen that with migrants entering our country. So this logic has been applied to a different group of people. And what's provocative about this movie is it's applied to the youngest adult citizens of our nation. And no doubt that's a definite reason why it didn't find any audience in 1971. In fact, I'm guessing that every one of the very many independent movie theater house owners of that time would have been like, what? You want me to show a movie that demonstrates that the police and National Guard can be and often are evildoers,
Right.
and that young people who are trying to defend these privileged positions of privilege are the good guys, but they're going to be punished terribly?
Yeah.
This is going to sew up in 90 minutes? You want me to do this on purpose?
Right.
And we're about to have an election? Really? Are you kidding me?
What is that saying? If you're young and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. And if you're old and you're not a conservative, you have no brain.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, that's how we've got the unfortunate, the very ageist epithet, okay, boomer, because in a lot of cases, well, the government is a bunch of assholes, and that's bad, and we got to do something about it. We got to stop them. But then what happens? And then you do stop them, and then you become the assholes. Once again, this story is totally sad and tragic, especially in when you think of the ways in which it really does mirror real life. But then, should I not be put at ease by, this is just the human cycle. This is just what happens. You're young
being put
and you're
at ease
liberal.
thing. So let me just break in. When you put down difficult youth who are doing things that are non-compliant, disagreeable, insulting, and in fact maybe backward to your way of life, but let's put them down. That's this movie. It's very MAGA.
Totally, absolutely.
and I found that connection just startling as I was going to do my day's errands, and I went, oh.
You don't have to like my point of view, but I have every right to go out and shout it at the heavens.
Well, there's a bottom line kind of a moment, a sequence in this movie where many of these issues, I think, bubble up into the text of what this movie is trying to express. The setup is the group of Punishment Park goers.
Parkers. Parkers.
The Parkers are trying to find that flagpole. But the group realizes they can't travel together. One group stays behind in a sort of a shelter. They're going to try to have a stand and fight against the police that are pursuing them. Okay, they're unarmed, so they go to find weapons. Sticks, rocks.
Right.
They're assailed then by the police force that's tracking and hunting them. And they manage to kill one of these officers.
Right.
Which creates blood wrath in the officers.
How dare you?
Who then feel completely justified. We're going to now hunt you for real with loaded weapons and go for bear.
Oh, the kid gloves are off.
Right. This is not just we're going to jostle you with our clubs. We're going to shoot you to death.
Right.
And there becomes then this rising tension for the rest of the Parkers as they move through Punishment Park. Mm-hmm. Some of them just want to find the finish line and be free. Some of them are like willing to give up because they're so heat prostrated. But then some of them realizes we're going to be shot and killed because that thing happened over there. And another group don't even know what happened.
Right.
They don't know why this violence is uncorked. What's the point? Well, that's the text. The text shows us this. The armed guards who are upset because their hunting of the prey results in the death of one of their own, using their own hunting and the death of one of their own as fuel to actually go kill versus just hunt.
Right.
And to be surprised that prey will occasionally act against you because they don't want to be hunted.
Right.
And those who are prey just trying to find safety or scattering or on occasion dying in trying to escape. I've watched rabbits get hunted by packs of dogs on YouTube. It can be a disastrous thing. Their hearts will stop.
Yeah.
And another group who simply give up. I can't do better than just fold. The state who has all the weaponry versus the non-statists, the citizens who have none, that's a big difference. And if you've got the weaponry and bring it down on people, that can't help but feel like the wrong thing to do. When the citizens have only said, we don't want that. We don't want you to do that to us.
Right.
But we'll do it anyway because you saying you don't want that is going to get up our ire.
Right.
And that's dramatized in that one sequence when, in fact, the Parkers are able to fight back well enough to kill one of the hunters.
Right.
I didn't feel bad about it.
No.
On the other hand, you see some of that guard's friends talking about, that wasn't cool. Well, it wasn't from their point of view. But we're able to see that it's not cool.
Right.
But who set up the system?
Well, right, exactly.
Nobody in Punishment Park set up the system. It's faraway lawmakers.
Yeah, right. But they're still working at enforcing this thing. It's like, so you really are responsible for this.
You're the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that that's going to sometimes result in bad action.
Right.
Several of the Parkers, they have a real understanding of that. They do their direct address interviews in the field to the camera operators that are following them along. They say, there's no way out of this.
I can't even believe anybody would pick Punishment Park because so what you're saying is it's either death in the desert or I got to serve this sentence anyways.
And if I manage to survive the desert, I'm going to prison.
Yeah.
But they don't really know that because they're told you can escape your sentence if you just... And then so... What's the bigger logic of this? If you're such an athlete that you can march or hike through the open desert in less than 2 days, because there's a time limit on this thing.
Right, yeah.
In less than 2 days, Running Man. This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks, a conversation between Garrett Chaffin-Quiray and
Ed Rosa.
Boop boopity doo.